For more on this, we're joined via Skype by political analyst and chief editor of the Kabul Times Daily, Hamidullah Arefi in Afghanistan. Mr. Arefi, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Globe.
My pleasure.
What is your reaction to the latest explosion? I mean, they come after President Trump abruptly ended talks with the Taliban over a deal that would have allowed the United States to withdraw its troops from that country in its longest war.
Actually, Taliban didn't stop any their bloodshed campaign and violence against the Afghan people and government. During the ninth round of peace talks with the U.S. delegation in Doha, Taliban still continued to attack public places, holy places, and they spared no effort to disrupt the democratic processes, which is definitely election and other processes. So, unfortunately, we had twin blasts today in northern Parwan province and in Kabul. The first happened on, as your news said, on election rally of Mr. President, which killed 26 people and injured more than 38 one. And the second, unfortunately, happened on one of the military bases in Kabul near to U.S. Embassy, which killed 22 people and injured more than 42 people. So we had almost more than 80 injuries and more than 40 martyrs today in the two major cities. Taliban said that they will disrupt all measures which will be taking place to hold the upcoming presidential elections. As of now, I'm talking to you. Taliban has cut power violence to Kabul and other 11 provinces. So almost 12 provinces of Afghanistan are out of electricity now. It's because the Taliban said that, again, they said that they will put pressures on Afghan government and the US so that to be back on the negotiations. But they said that first they will talk to US and then they will be ready to talk with the Afghan government. So they have not yet agreed to talk with the Afghan government.
I mean, in as much as the Taliban has taken responsibility for that particular blast, and they did say that it was intentional as a means of sabotaging President Ghani's chances of winning or his rally. I mean, do you think that the insurgents' declaration that the only other option was more fighting was inspired by President Trump's declaration that the US-Taliban talks were dead?
Yes, actually, what the President of the United States said, that they had held 9 rounds of talks, but they have seen nothing from the Taliban side to see this violence to be stopped by them. They continue to attack not only Afghans, even they have, in one of the deadly attacks a week ago, they hit one of the U.S. vehicles, which was close to our office in the Kabul Times Daily, and almost broken all of our staffs and equipments there. So it means that they have no intentions. In my opinion, Taliban has been separated to many different groups, which they cannot take control of them now. For example, they have their own economic interest in the country. Some they have been involved in drug trafficking and human trafficking. And some of those Talibans that they were talking with the US in Doha, so they were not able to take control of these kind of groups. So that was the reason that they didn't have a single address to talk with them. So that's why that the US president called off all the peace negotiations with them until that they announce a ceasefire or show a green light to the US and the Afghan government about the peace talk.
You're saying that the Taliban has got economic interests in Afghanistan, but then what is their main agenda? What is it that they are gunning for? Because they've refused to negotiate for a ceasefire, and they refused to meet with the representative of President Ghani's government.
Actually, we had some reports that Taliban took control of some areas in the northern provinces, which they were very famous for the lapis lazuli and for the gold. Fortunately, the Afghan forces could recapture those areas in recent days, that we had some progress on that. So that's why that they are not, some of these groups, they are not willing to join this kind of talks, because they just see that, okay, let's continue this kind of instability in the region. So they could utilize the opportunity for their own economic interest, which is definitely not only Taliban. There are some other countries in the region that they are somehow supporting these kind of groups. Meanwhile, they also somehow trying to achieve some political victory. It means that in one of the draft agreements that they were supposed to finalize that with the U.S. delegation in Doha, it was mentioned that if U.S. is willing to stay in Afghanistan, then the Afghan nation, which was definitely Taliban in the future, they will ask, the U.S., that to remain in Afghanistan and fight Al Qaeda and ISIS. It means that they are somehow willing to have U.S. back here. So it means that their so-called war or jihad against the U.S. would be nothing.
It seems that the Taliban is now keeping its promises of targeting the elections or election rallies and campaigns, and as well as some of the polling stations, and they have warned Afghans not to vote in the upcoming elections. Do you think this will affect the elections? Do you think there will be an election at all?
Actually, this is not something new. Taliban did this to previous parliamentary elections, and they did two rounds of presidential elections before. They chopped off fingers of the voters, and they destroyed most of the ballot centers, and they kept trying to avoid these electoral materials not to reach to this kind of ballot to some of the ballot centers in the provinces. So they did. But fortunately, people, they voted to their own candidates. They joined the democratic processes in capital Kabul, and they did in the other provinces. You have in the news that on daily basis we have got this kind of suicide attacks, increasing suicide attacks. I mean, in Kabul and other provinces, but still we can see that people, they join their own offices and they just go. So they have already defied Taliban street in terms of these democratic processes, and on daily basis going to work for the government and the people.
Do you think President Ghani has been incredibly weakened by this blast, and has his security been compromised?
I don't think so, because there were some attacks on him in other provinces too, not only on the electoral campaigns, but there were at a time that he was representing the government in some of the key events. So this happens, and we have got even rocket attacks in Kabul, which were landed near to presidential palace and the U.S. embassy. But still, we can see that the presidential palace forces, they are doing their best to protect the areas. So this kind of attacks already happened not only on on President Ghani's rally, but we can see that the Taliban still continue to attack the other electoral campaigns as well related to other presidential candidates.
Which are some of the flash points where the Taliban has got more leeway on?
Sorry, I was not able to hear you well.
What are some of the flash points or the areas where the Taliban is in existence and has got more leeway in?
Actually, they are much stronger in some of the southern provinces. Still, they do have control of those areas, and they, especially in those areas which is surrounding with Pakistan and some of the Central Asian countries. So they just did to destabilize that region, and they expanded their militancy to other nearby provinces of the capital Kabul, which could be a very strong feat. But still, the Afghan forces, backed by the United States and the NATO, they have already conducted some military operation, pushed back these kind of threats to the capital Kabul. But still, we have got some of these threats by the Taliban inside the capital. Even the Afghan forces, somehow they are not able to control this kind of suicide attacks inside the city, which is very, very difficult. And they have their own safe events inside the city. So they have to be searched and demolished.
Now, taking into cognizance that the Taliban has now undermined the integrity of the security apparatus in Afghanistan, I mean, for Taliban to blast at an area where the president is around, and for the possibility that the United States may be withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, will Afghanistan see peace anytime soon?
In my opinion, intra-Afghan talk will be the lasting solution for the ongoing war. If Taliban they traveled to Moscow just 2 or 3 days ago, and now they are in Iran talking about the peace process. But I think they are going for the wrong addresses, and they have taken wrong approaches. They have to help intra-Afghan talks with the Afghan people, politicians, the Afghan government. They should seek ways for the lasting peace. Otherwise, the withdrawal of the U.S. forces will be the same as the Soviet Unions that they gone. But when after the Soviet Union that they left, so we saw the very devastating war in Afghanistan, which led to demolition of all the infrastructures and migration of millions of Afghans, and we have lost so many of the our people. So this tragedy could be happened again if the Taliban do not seek ways for the intra-Afghan talk and talk directly with the Afghans. Because the two sides of the conflicts are Afghan, the Afghan government and the Taliban. Taliban is not attacking U.S. forces because U.S. are on their own basis, but these are Afghans that they are being targeted in public places, in the rallies, the democratic processes, and even inside their army. So intra-Afghan talks could be the lasting solution.
Hamidullah Arefi, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. That was political analyst and chief editor of the Kabul Times Daily, Hamidullah Arefi.